you can see that after 1 second we start to append this to this span. So now that we've done that, we know that our interval is actually working, so we can go ahead and adjust the code accordingly. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Let's also refresh our page so we don't have lots of A's across our page. And we're going to go ahead and first of all initially set the counter with the maximum time, or the time that we've specified here. So let's go ahead and, let's put that one in there. Let's go ahead and again use a selector to select our counter element on our page, and we're going to set the text inside of this to time. So what this will do is it will initially set our counter value inside of here to 10, or whatever value that we feed in just here. So for example, if we were counting with 5 seconds, that would initially set this to 5. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to actually go down and count this down. So we want to remove 1 for every second. So time equals time minus 1. Every second it will minus 1 from this original value time, which is at the moment specified as 10. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and just test this. What's going to happen is we're going to initially set this to 10, the counter to 10, and then it will be 9, then it will be 8, 7, 6, 5, blah blah blah. So let's go ahead and take a look at our page. You can see it starts at 10 and then goes to 9, 8, 7, blah blah blah, and that will count all the way down to 1. Now we have a problem here because we need to include some kind of check. As you can see, it's gone to 0 and then minus 1, and this will just keep counting down for as long as you have this page open. So what we want to do is we want to catch this countdown at the value 1, and when we have caught it at 1, we want to go ahead and clear the interval and then redirect the user to a particular page. And the reason we clear the interval is because if we don't, if the page load time is slightly longer than, you know, a couple of seconds or a second, the counter will automatically continue to count down until that particular page is loaded. So we can do a demonstration of this. If we were just to go ahead and set the window location equals URL, again we're picking up this variable from here and placing it here. So after 10 seconds we're redirecting to this URL here. So let's go ahead and check this out and you'll see what I mean. Oh yeah, okay, so yeah. Okay, so the reason this hasn't worked is we need to include an if statement to actually check if the time is equal to 1. So if time is equal to 1, we want to redirect the user to the URL that's been specified or fed to this function. So when time is equal to 1, we redirect the user. Let's go back and check that. Okay, so we're starting at 10 again and we're counting down. Now watch very carefully and see when it gets to 1, you might see it flicker to 0. Oh no. Let's go ahead and do this at 5 so we can see what's happening a bit clearer. Go back there. Okay, so we're starting at 5, we're counting down, and that should, right, it's redirecting at 2 at the moment, so let's have a look at what might be going wrong. Oh, of course, yeah, so we want this at 0. The reason this is happening is that we are checking at it when it gets to 1, and before we have a chance to go ahead and show this time, it's actually already redirecting the user. So we have a couple of options. We can either set this to 0, or we can bring this up to the top and keep it at 1. So I'm just going to leave it here and say if time is equal to 0. Okay, so back to the page. We'll check that actually works. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's just wait for that. Right, at 1 it redirected. Now if we have, say, a page that's slightly more, takes slightly longer to load, for example, let's say ebay.com, and when we go ahead and test this out once again, hopefully eBay takes a bit longer to load, and you'll see this flicker to 0 before you actually see it redirect. There we go. Right, you saw it flicker to 0 before the redirect happened, and that's because the ebay.com website obviously is a bit slightly longer to load than Google. So we have a problem here, and what we need to do is we actually need to go ahead and clear the interval before we actually redirect the user. So we want to go ahead and say clear interval, and this is above just before we redirect the user, so we want to stop the interval. Now remember earlier I called this interval interval, so now what we can do is, because this variable interval is equal to this function, we can go ahead and specify interval in this clear interval here as a parameter. So that will get rid of the interval and it will stop the counter. And what this means is that the counter, this whole thing will no longer run. And therefore when we return back and refresh, you'll see a countdown. It will stop at 1, wait for the load, and then it will redirect the page. So it's a minor thing. However, when you include something like this code on your website, you want to make sure that you're not leaving the user hanging. So, and displaying the incorrect figure. We want it to stop at 1 and then wait for the page to load. We don't want it to go, into 0 or even minus figures. For example, if you had a page that took 4 or 5 seconds to load, you're actually going to end up having the user be displayed with minus figures as they're waiting for the page to load. So now we've successfully completed this timer or this countdown to redirect. If you want to use this on any page, all you would have to do is include counter.js on a page that you want it to be used, and you'll go ahead and include an element with an ID of counter, or you can change this and specify which element you'd like to count down in. For example, we could count down inside of a paragraph, and we could call this count down, and then we could change this to count down, and it would work in exactly the same way. You see we start counting down, but we've just done this inside of a paragraph. So as long as you've written it in this way, it's an extremely flexible way of simply including this, including something with the ID of countdown or whichever you choose, and you can use it across your website. So that is a countdown to redirect using JavaScript and jQuery.